Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order for the day. First item on our agenda is approval of the day's agenda.
So move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Citizens to be heard. Any citizens that would like to be heard on any item that is not on today's agenda? Seeing none, approve payment of bills and vouchers.
So, second.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve payment of bills and vouchers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. United Way, Kimberly Savageau. Good morning. And you brought some backup, it looks like, Kimberly, huh? So that's good.
Good morning. I'd like to first off by saying thank you for your past and continued support of the United Way campaign here in Clay County. Last year we had a great year for the campaign with almost a 12% increase in the number of employees who contributed. The campaign's going to begin shortly and will be wrapped up by November 10th. And so I brought Travis Christopher and Thomas Hill with United Way of Cass Clay here to speak a little bit about what United Way is about. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I'll also say good morning, but I'll also join the chorus and say thank you. They're two little words, but they mean a lot to us. We kick off our campaign officially in Clay County and Cass County tomorrow at noon, and I'll just tell you that our goal is $5.65 million. Last year was 5.5, but that's not public yet, so I'm not supposed to tell you that. But it's an increase of about 2%.
This is televised.
Yeah, so that's all right. So there you go.
It's on TV.
It's 2.5% increase, and we think that's very attainable. We've met with business leaders and citizens around the county and told them that. And there's agreement that that's very attainable. We're excited about our results, and I brought Thomas Hill to talk a little bit about what's happening in the county. But I have to say, thank you to you and the county for what you've done. The team members here, the staff members here are more than generous. If I were to be asked on the street, how is Clay County responding to the campaign? More than generous is the actual phrasing I would use, because the leadership given here at the county is second to none. So my mission here today is to say thank you in advance. We're looking forward to a great fall with the campaign, and our theme is change the story. We have so many good results this year that every story is changing, whether it comes to out-of-school time programming, income stability, and helping families in need. We have a lot of results, but this year we're going to go up to the next level. And I brought Thomas Hill with us. He's with our community impact team. He gets to have the fun job. He gets to tell the story of the results. So that's what we brought him with today.
Thanks, Travis, and thank you very much again for the opportunity to be here. I really do want to spend a little bit of time just this morning talking about what happens with that $5.65 million, because I think a lot of times we get excited about raising dollars, and as we should, and we have a lot of volunteers that help us do that. But I think equally important, if not more important, is what happens with those dollars once we raise them. And so I'm really in charge of putting those dollars to work back in the community with our volunteers that lead our investment strategy. And so we have a commitment throughout Cass County, North Dakota, and specifically here, Clay County, Minnesota. It's not just Moorhead. And so just wanted to provide a little bit of information about how we support not only children, young adults, but seniors too, all throughout Clay County. We've got a very, very large commitment to the town of Barnesville and help support senior programming to keep seniors independent and in their own homes. I don't think it's any secret to any one of you that the rising cost of nursing home care, especially for folks that are low income or find themselves isolated, is increasing by the day. And so really our commitment to help those folks staying independent in their own home out in rural Clay County and Barnesville has been strong since about 2006. We also have a large commitment to the area of Hawley, supporting REACH, which is a nonprofit. And we've provided support for their food pantry and basic needs programs, because really we understand that a lot of times folks who are living in those rural areas don't have access or don't have the ability to come into Moorhead for services. And so providing services right where folks are at is really, really critical. And so I think that's just a little bit about kind of our rural reach of Clay County. But I think more importantly, when we talk about supporting youth and families, it's really about trying to slow that cycle of poverty and help reduce social service and criminal justice spending on the back end. I'm sure you as a commission look at a lot of what happens through the county, looking at county budgets and government spending, and I'm sure a lot of your constituents would like to keep that low. And we hear it as well, that if we want to really make sure that we're providing the opportunity for families to be self-sufficient, we got to invest early. Investing on the back end in criminal justice spending, sure, it's necessary, but we really feel there's a more economical way to do that. One example that we have been working in conjunction with Moorhead Public Schools on is the truancy intervention program. And that's a program that's for students who are at risk of being truant and actually going into juvenile court. What this does is actually assigns them really a caring mentor to check in with them and ensure that they're getting the supportive services that they need so they can go to school. What's unique about this program specifically is that it doesn't just work with the student but also the family. And some of the data, as Travis said, we've got a lot of results in the 2014-2015 school year. The truancy intervention program, well, there was 408 seniors, and the total number of seniors that the truancy intervention program worked with during that time was 180. And from that 180 students that were at risk of being truant and not graduating, 150 of them graduated on time with their peers. And I don't think, again, I have to have you do any stretch of the imagination when we talk about what happens when kids don't graduate high school, right? A lot of times they're ending up, again, in the juvenile justice system, and when they end up in the juvenile justice system, a lot of times that carries on to the adult justice system, which is, again, a burden to a lot of taxpayers. And so we feel that this investment is a really economical way to keep kids out of that juvenile justice system. Additionally, and this is on the Cass County side, but it also works with students who reside in Moorhead, we have a program called Youth Court. And that is really aimed at keeping first-time offenders, so kids who have got a low-level offense, theft, vandalism, something nonviolent, really tries to work with them to keep them out of the juvenile justice system. And what it does is, once they commit the offense, they actually get judged by a jury of their peers. So if you're 14 and you commit theft at Target, you actually go into youth court, and you get judged by a jury of 13 and 14-year-olds who decide what your sentence is. And what's really interesting about this program is that 87% of the kids who go through youth court don't actually enter the juvenile justice system, so we're keeping them out. And so I think those are two really, really good examples of trying to make sure we're providing early investments into children and families. But I think probably the best one, and it might not be known to a lot of individuals or people in this community, but we actually partner with Moorhead Public Schools to provide truly a jump start to kids at the youngest stages of life, before they enter kindergarten. We provide and partner with Moorhead Public Schools and provide them over $100,000 a year. It's actually about $107,000 annually to operate a program called Jump Start and Keys to Kindergarten. And what this does is it provides age-appropriate skills and activities for 3- and 4-year-olds who are entering in to the Moorhead Public School system in an effort to get them on track, reading, math-wise, socially, emotionally, academically, with their peers. And what we've seen is that for the kids that go through Jump Start, again, many of them who are low income and don't have the supports and the family dynamic that many of you and I grew up with, what we're seeing is that academic achievement gap between those kids is actually starting to close. And so these little kiddos are now starting kindergarten on track with their other peers. And so I think that's probably the message that I would really like to end with, is that we need to partner more with city, county, and government officials, because the job of keeping individuals in safe, secure, independent in their own homes doesn't solely rely on your shoulders as commissioners. I hope that you see United Way as a partner in this effort, and that we can provide investments that will slow the cycle of poverty and provide a good quality of life for individuals in this community, specifically Clay County. So, as Travis said, we're excited to officially kick off our campaign tomorrow to raise $5.65 million, but really just want to say thank you to Kimberly for inviting us here, have the opportunity to speak, and if any of you have any questions, happily would entertain them, but again, just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question, but Thomas, I'd just like to say a couple of things regarding the truancy intervention program.
Absolutely.
I represent the county on the Clay County Collaborative, and we had a meeting just the other day, and total program budget's $172,000. The collaborative portion of the budget that we pay is $86,000. Number of children served, 1,335. number of phone calls, after-school programming for rural schools. Moorhead, DGF, Hawley, and Hewlin Hitterdale. Particularly after school in the rural areas. It's so important that these people, kids have the opportunity to become involved. And this is just one of the things you do, but you did bring it up, and just want to say it's a very good program. Thank you.
Kevin? Yeah, I would also like to comment on the youth court thing. I guess I was unaware that existed. We have different types of courts that we deal with. We have drug courts, and there's one now that we're working on with veterans. But it's, and we have a regional juvenile detention center here in Moorhead, and we're seeing numbers really rise in terms of the number of people who are joining our facility. And it's something we don't like to see, of course, because but I have interest in it. And Brian, I think this is something, I don't know how well informed Stephen is regarding the youth court, and that's operating out of Cass County, you said, right? But I would, I think we should do some checking on that and see if that could be expanded over here to a little bit more. So.
Absolutely, Commissioner. Just for a little bit of context, the program is actually operated by a nonprofit, Lutheran Social Services of North Dakota, but it is in partnership with the court, and so the district judges do agree to defer specific cases to youth court, and then basically, upon successful completion and tracking of whatever the penance, if you will, is, or the sentence is, then that crime is expunged from the record of the youth. But it has to be done in conjunction with an official agreement from the court. But I would happily be able to connect you to the individuals at Restorative Justice who do that, because I think, again, they've got a lot of really great data about how the program
and maybe we are right now doing something in Clay County, but I just haven't heard of it. This is new to me, hearing about it, so I'm glad you had said that. And it's for an investment like that. What is the per diem rate now for people to pay per day for a juvenile to be in our facility? It's around $180 to $200 and some dollars a day to have somebody once they reach that level. So it's extremely. That's when you say if you can get to them before it gets to that level, there's a significant savings to the entire community, and obviously the bigger savings is to that individual's life.
Of course.
But anyway, thank you very much for your report.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's me.
Okay. MPCA requirement for update of industrial waste plan as part of landfill permit application. Kevin, you got
Yeah,
some
thank you,
info for
Mr. I just wanted to report to you, I had received notice from Kirk that the MPCA was going to require us to upgrade our industrial waste plan as part of our landfill permit this time around. According to Kirk, our industrial waste plan has not been updated since the early 1990s. And so they have put it in as a requirement for us to do that. And Kirk had gone out and got, that's going to require some outside assistance in preparing what's needed to do that. And originally he had gone out and gotten some quotes from some people, and the low number had originally come in at, I think it was $8,000. And I just received an email from, was it you, Vicki, or something, or from Kirk, that they've gotten that number down to somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000 now, that they're going to do that. But it's something that it's within solid waste budget to do. So I'm not asking for any action here, but I just thought it was important for the board to know that when we're going through the solid waste permit process, that that's a pretty significant requirement to upgrade that industrial waste plan. So once it's getting going, we'll ask Kirk to come back and give a report on it. But
Jenny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, how often do you need to update that requirement or that permit? Is it?
Well, evidently, it's
Years
not,
since?
it's not real often, because, you know.
It's been a number of years since
Yeah,
it's been done.
it was, you know, that was 10 years before I was even on this board, that the last time it was done, so. You know, it'll be a good question to ask Kirk, is that something that we should just automatically review every, you know, through the SWAC committee anyway, every 5 years or something?
So there was no specific event that caused the need for
No,
it?
no, other than the fact that I think MPCA took the opportunity to look at our entire process, including industrial waste, and determine that, you know what, maybe you should look at your, and they've probably seen some things within our old plan that probably need to be fixed. So, anyway, that was just kind of an update on that.
Okay, thank you. 2016 insurance renewals. Darren and Jennifer, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
How are you?
All right, well, thank you for having us. It's that time of the year and everybody's excited for first day of school. And also the insurance rates that we have. We've met twice with the insurance committee, and so the things that we're bringing you today to the board is to clarify some of the things that we talked about on the insurance committee, and also to make you aware of the rates that we'll be having for 2016. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to the expert and all-knowing, all-seeing Jennifer Pearson, our HR coordinator.
Thank you, thank you. I will try to sum up what we talked about for now or last week in 10 minutes. So the first page that you have in your packet is, of course, the rates. I'm just going to go through the information, and then there'll be 3 separate motions that we'll need board action on. And I thought we could just do that at the end. So just to start with the insurance rates, we'll start with the health insurance. So you'll see here highlighted in yellow that there is an increase to our health insurance for 2016. It is a 12.5% increase. And that's based on the Lakes Country rating of us as an entity. If we would have just been rated by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota, we would have seen a 17.8% increase. And then we are rated by the pool as a whole, and so then that dropped us down to 12.5. This year, there were 3 options for the ratings that we did for the renewals at Lakes Country, and the committee was able to vote on those. The first option would have given us a 16% increase. The second option would have been a 14%. So luckily, we voted correctly for the right one for the renewal, and then we ended up with a 12.5. So the pool did help us a little bit for 2016, reducing us from 17.8 to 12.5. So in turn, that would increase, or would have a possible increase to the county contribution, increasing that up to $1,101. We take half of the triple gold family increase and always apply that to the county contribution. So that increase was $222.50. So we rounded that half to 111. So that increase for the full-timers is 1101, and then it's prorated from there, and that's down at the bottom here in the yellow. Just a couple notes on that. This was a tough year for us in regard to the renewal for the 2 years that we're rated for. The most recent one being rated the highest, and that's the one that was the toughest for us. We did have 7 high cases over $50,000, 2 of which were in the $400,000 range. So that will continue to be on our rating for the 2017 as well. That won't drop off, but that was a tough renewal. I think the pool as a whole was 9.5% or 9%, and then trend for this next year was 7.9% for increases.
For next year.
For next year, yes, correct. So this year in 2015, what we saw this year was a 13%. Next year we'll see 12.5. Just for information, the single deductible for the HSA, the deductibles for the new plan, the Viva HSA, are indexed to fluctuate, but for next year they will not change. So the $3,250 will remain the same for deductibles. And the maximum contribution for the single HSA will remain unchanged for 2016, but the family maximum contribution will be up $100 to $6,750. And also in part of our administrative fees for health insurance is a new program called Clear Cost Health. And that is basically a new program offered by Lakes Country that's a cost comparison tool. So employees will be able to go on the website and register, and they'll be able to see cost comparisons for things like medical procedures and different hospitals and clinics, as well as pharmaceutical expenses, which I think prescription drugs will be very important, especially for the HSA component. And the cost for that, which is $1.35, I think, per member per month, is now rolled into our premiums and our administrative fees. And that is available to all members. And then last year, we talked about a program called Healthy Start, which was a program for high-risk pregnancies. And last year, we had to opt into that program, and it was a cost to members as part of the claims. But they've rolled away from Healthy Start and now call it maternity management, and that's now offered to everybody within the pool and part of our administrative fee as well. And that'll be as of 1/1/16. If you're high risk, Blue Cross Blue Shield will reach out to you and try to get you to be part of the program. If you're a lower risk pregnancy, you can certainly participate, but you would have to opt into the program for that. Anything else on health insurance?
No, I think the one thing that we probably need to look into a little bit more is that clear cost, because they did a little demo down at Lakes Co-op. And if you're on a medication that you get all the time, you can punch in that medication into this website, and it'll tell you where the cheapest place to buy that medication is. And it can be pretty significant, actually, from the demos that they showed us. So we're hoping that maybe through this Clear Costs website, that some of these, costs to the medications, and even like if you have a MRI that you have to have done or whatever, you can go in and punch that into this website, and it'll tell you exactly where to go to get the cheapest costs. So it's kind of a good program from what we've seen so far. We haven't demoed it here yet, but from what they showed us, it was pretty interesting.
And education will come out at open enrollment about the clear cost, and we also have a demo that we will play, so it'll be on our website as part of the open enrollment process to teach people about that. One thing we talked about at the committee was maybe trying to bring dependents back onto our health plans. We don't have a lot of families on our health plans, which kind of noticed I didn't put the demographics in here, but we don't have a whole lot of families. And to keep our plans healthy, we do need to bring some families back on. So Lakes Country had mentioned we can't have single plus one here, and they consider that single plus spouse, but they did mention looking into single plus dependent or dependents. And I actually did get rates back for that. And unfortunately, we weren't sure, I wasn't 100% sure, but it does increase the family premium. So there is a significant savings between the family and the employee plus dependent or children between $300 and $400. But then the family would go up anywhere from $63 to $91. So for example, the $32.50 would go up $63.50, and the triple gold family would go up $91. But the savings between the family triple gold and the employee plus dependent or children triple gold is almost $400. So we did just get those rates. I haven't passed it on to the committee, but we were thinking that that just might be something we would want to research more, maybe some sort of a survey to the employees to see the interest in the dependent part of that. Because if we can't get dependents back on the plan, then we're just simply increasing the family rate. So we just wanted to bring that to your attention that we've looked into it, but we'll probably do a little bit more research on that and see where we can go with that.
Frank, did you have a question?
Well, I guess you probably just answered it, I was going to question why we don't have single plus one, self plus one. You said
Single plus one isn't
we can't
allowed.
get it? Why can't we get it, or what is it?
Well, Blue Cross's philosophy is the more tiers, the more choice, and then the less people that you're going to have in your plan. So we want to keep the families in, and their belief is the single plus one is typically the empty nesters, and it's usually the employee plus spouse, and those are the highest risk, and they have the most claims and the highest claims. So that's the group that they don't like to focus on. They want to bring the families back in because those are typically the healthier members, is the children and the dependents.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What you were mentioning about looking into these rates, are you talking about for next year?
Yes,
Thank
would not
you.
be for 2016.
Any other questions?
Well, I wanted to comment on the rate increase in the pool that we're in. And this year, I think the average increase is smaller than what Clay County is, correct?
For the pool
Yeah.
itself, yes, it's 9%.
Right, 9% versus our 12%. But there's been years where it's been the other way around too, where we've actually subsidized the pool by averaging out these rates. And I know, Darren, you represent us on that.
Correct.
Yeah. And that was something I'm glad then that we were able to see ours get knocked down compared to,
Right.
I mean, the pool helped us this year.
Yeah, the pool definitely helped us this year.
Whereas
We would
it's-
have had almost 18% had we not have been
Right.
in the pool.
But I think that's important for this board to know and for future boards to know that sometimes the pool works in your favor and sometimes it doesn't, but at least what it does is it keeps everything at a more consistent average, nobody likes a 12% increase as an average, but
Right.
it is what it is.
Yeah, and we, like Jennifer said, we did have 5 very high cases this year.
Right.
So,
And and 2 of them are gonna still be there next year.
yes.
We're gonna pen next.
Yeah, you could have.
Okay, so we'll just move on to the dental increase in the rates. This is suggested funding level increases, so we do, either accept these or not accept these. But the single premium will remain the same at $54, but the family suggested funding increase is $3, so $138 to $141. Currently through August, our claims are slightly below. I just added some new information in, and I think we're negative 12,000 now. At the time of the committee, we were negative 5,000. So it would be our recommendation to accept that increase when we get to the end. Life insurance, we'll spend a little bit more time on that. We did do an RFP this year as we have to through, the Minnesota statute. We're supposed to do one every 5 years. So we did go out for bid with the help of Oaks Inc., who is our municipal pool. So the rates, it's kind of a small sheet, but the rates are in there. We only had 3 actual responses. We did have 15 entities that they did send RFP to. 14 of them, we had 3 that responded and the remainder did not. Either they said they were not competitive enough to beat Minnesota Life's rates, or they just did not respond simply. If you look at it, Minnesota Life and the Hartford are pretty neck and neck in their rates and their responses. But the Hartford down at the bottom, there's whether they can match what's in our current plan or can't. And there were a couple of reductions with the Hartford, such as they can't match our current 100% accelerated death benefit. And there was a little bit of a deviation in regard to their requirements of how many people are in here for supplemental life. They require at least 25% participation, things like that. And MetLife, there really wasn't a savings on that side. This was reviewed by the committee, and we were looking to recommend accepting the Minnesota Life bid, which is our current provider at this time. And there are some enhancements that will come with that. For example, there is a 3-year rate guarantee, and also we will cover dependent children up to the age of 26, just like we do on our health insurance. Currently, right now, it's under the Minnesota law, which is only up to the age of 19, or between the ages of 19 and 25 if they're a full-time student. Under the enhancement, we would cover them until 26, regardless of whether they're a student or not. And then Child Life would also be available at annual enrollment with no health questions. Currently, if you don't have dependent life and you added at open enrollment, you have to go through the health questionnaire. But one of the enhancements would be you would no longer have to do that for dependent life only. If we were to accept these rates as they are, the basic life insurance of $10,000 rate would go down from $1.30 to $1.20, but there would be no change in the supplemental life rates at this time. However, we also, as part of this RFP, asked for increased levels to our basic life insurance. Currently, it's $10,000, and I believe it's been $10,000 for quite a long time. I'm not sure how long, but so we did ask for what the cost would be from $15,000, $20,000, or $25,000. So that is what this other spreadsheet is in your packet, this one here, would be the cost for those increases if we change the coverage. So if we kept our basic life insurance at $10,000 based on our volume, we would have a little bit of an annual premium savings of $454. And then if we did increase it, it's about a $1.60 increase per, $5,000. So $15,000 is going to be $1.80 per member per month. $20,000 would be $2.40 per member per month. $25,000 would raise us to $3 per member per month. And again, it is considered employer paid, so it comes out of the county contribution. The insurance committee recommendation was to increase to the $25,000 coverage. Of course, our intent is to cover the basic funeral costs, which we see increasing every year. I think you can still do that for about $10,000, but it doesn't hurt to give a little, extra for bills and things like that as well. Although we do have a supplemental life, but the committee did make a motion to recommend the $25,000, and that was passed at the committee level.
And that would end up being an increase of $1.80 per month.
Correct. From the $1.20 that we would have.
Yeah, we're at $1.30
$30
right
now.
now, so it'd be
$1.50 increase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions on the RFP process or any of that information? Also, I'm sorry, I didn't mention one of the other enhancements to the Minnesota Life would be portability. Currently with our supplemental life and our basic life, you could convert that to an individual whole life policy if you leave employment. But now they would add the additional option of portability. That just means you can keep the group term life policy that we currently have at a little bit lower rates because the Minnesota Life conversion rates are pretty high. So then you could slide that portability in there for the insurance that is portable and use that. So you would have kind of a choice between the two. So that's another additional enhancement as well. Let's see. Long-term care insurance. For 2016, the rates will remain the same. However, the long-term care coverage will be sunsetted in February 1st of 2016. It will no longer be an option for our employees. CNA is pulling out of the long-term care market. They do not have enough in their reserves that they can feel comfortable in covering any claims that they may pay out for current members if they continue to accept new members. So as of February 1st, 2016, they will no longer accept new members. So this would be the last open enrollment that we will have for long-term care coverage. There is also no longer any Minnesota-approved group long-term care providers that we can even consider as options. So we basically at this point would not offer long-term care coverage past this open enrollment time. Anybody that's currently enrolled in long-term care, the plan will remain the same, the coverage will remain the same. Currently for 2016, the rates will remain the same, and they continue to be in the plan as they are now. So it will not affect current participants or any that will enroll in the plan at open enrollment. We currently only have about 20 participants, I think, in long-term care as it is. So that will be a communication also that will go out at open enrollment to make sure employees understand that. Any questions on that?
Yeah, excuse me.
Frank, go ahead.
Wasn't there one time they were looking at putting spouses on this too, that spouses could become eligible for this? I mean, I realize you're saying now they'll not take any new ones, but.
Spouses are eligible for long-term care, but they have to do underwriting. So anytime a spouse is applying for that, there's a longer questionnaire that goes with that, and it has to go through the long-term care underwriting. So they are eligible, but they have to be approved.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin?
Were we able to research the question that I had earlier, that if somebody had a long-term care policy outside of the county and they elected to buy this one, would they be able to collect on both?
She just got
I
that
just
this morning.
got that this morning.
Okay, all right.
So the answer to that question was the CNA long-term care policy does not have any offsets, so the policy would still pay even if an employee has an individual long-term care policy through the private market. But then he also does say, I cannot speak, though, if an individual policy would offset.
That would be
the
their
group
responsibility to
CNA.
check that.
Right, correct.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Okay, long-term disability, nothing changing with that. All the rates will be the same for 2016. Vision, there's no changes with the vision either. We are in year 2 of a 2-year rate guarantee, so we're seeing the same rates for about the 4th year now, so that will not change either. Let's see, select account, basic information about select account. Last year, they did incorporate electronic requirements to maintain our preferred pricing. Last year, we did go up to $2.11 for our participation fee. That should not change or will not change as of 2016, where we're supposed to have 70% participation in electronic payment, meaning direct deposit for anybody that didn't have a debit card, and we're at 98.6% because we did start requiring that last year at open enrollment. So that won't change. Also, at the very end of last year, they increased the cap of the medical flexible spending account $50. It was $2,500, they went up to $2,550. However, we did not increase that $50 because our renewals had already been approved and we were kind of already in open enrollment at that time. So we would like to increase that $50 for 2016. So the medical cap for flex would be $2,550. A couple of items for healthcare, I'm sorry, I'm going a little long here. For healthcare reform is that we do have to renew our grandfathered or non-grandfathered status. The VIBA HSA 3250, the new plan, had to come in non-grandfathered, so that will have to renew that continuing on a continual basis. But we do have to renew the grandfathered status on our Triple Gold, CMM, and VIBA 2600. The main reason for doing that is to protect us against the future unknown regulations, as well as the fact that it does affect the prescription part of those plans if we change them to non-grandfathered. So the board or the committee would recommend continuing the grandfathered status for those for 2016. So I suppose just to wrap up, the board action needed for today would be first, a motion to adopt the increases to the county contribution as well as to renew contracts with our current providers as outlined in your packet.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
The second one would be we'd figure we should do a separate one for the Minnesota Life bid, to accept the Minnesota Life bid for the life insurance coverage, including the increase of the basic life coverage level to $25,000 at a rate of $3 per member per month.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
And the third and final motion would be to renew the grandfathered status for the Triple Gold, Comprehensive Major Medical 1000, and the VIBA 2600 health plans for 2016.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
Thank you, I
Thank you.
appreciate letting me talk longer than I should have.
Thank you.
Good report. Thank you.
Good job, yeah.
Very good.
Very good. Approval of the conveyance of county right-of-way to the city of Holly. Dave and Nathan, good morning.
Morning.
Did everybody get the maps and everything that we put together? So what we're essentially trying to do is just clean up some of our right-of-way for our county. Oh, they got that. Okay.
That's what, I think,
Okay, there's if you just want to pass that around, that's kind of an aerial. There's two locations that we need to clean up. First one is in the area of the church in Holly, and the other area is by Sturdivant's. And what ended up having to happen is there were some alignment changes with that frontage road. And being that we were the lead on the project, we acquired some of this right-of-ways. We realigned things so that we had better sight distances and different spacings as we were approaching Highway 10, because not only did we fix the intersection at 3133, we also fixed some stuff up by the grocery store, a little bit on the west side of town. And it was never our intent to maintain or keep that right-of-way, so we're going to deed that back through a quitclaim deed to the city of Holly. Nathan did a lot of the work with the city on that, and I don't know if there's anything else you want to add on that, or?
No, basically, the two parcels that we're looking at today are on city streets, and we have no reason to maintain their right-of-way. So we'd as soon send it back to them.
So that property go back to this, it will go back to the city, I mean, like the one by the church, Doesn't go back to the church, it goes back to the city?
Yep, correct. And it's kind of, it's a right-of-way corridor. It's not part of their grass or anything like that, is that correct?
It's part of the street. It's actually the land that we're giving back to the city is the street itself.
Oh, it's in the street
It
itself?
is the
Yeah.
street.
Okay.
We kind of moved to the north there, right? It kind of bubbled out a little bit as we tried to push things a little bit further away from Highway 10. That way, as you were going kind of westbound by the church, take a left, there was room for that turn lane, for some stacking as people went either straight across or turned onto Highway 10 there. It allowed for that, kind of that creation of the turn lane, I guess, on, I think they call it 15th Avenue or 15th Street. So it allowed for that turn lane from Highway 10 to the north, so then the city street, I guess, kind of got realigned and got pushed a little bit further north.
Do you need two motions or just one?
Is it all in one document?
They're,
Yeah, I think there is. There's two quitclaim deeds. There's one, I guess we do need one for each parcel.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, before that, so the county was the lead, and we originally went out and acquired the right-of-way that we thought we needed,
Correct.
right? And since then, so, but that was a joint project between Holly, the county, and the state, correct?
Yeah.
So when we acquired that right away, we would have paid something for it.
Yeah, I believe all three parties.
Okay, so as long as all three parties paid for it, then, you know, I just want to make sure that if the county would have paid for
Exactly.
the entire thing, then why would we be giving it away?
Sure.
You know, but I just wanted to verify, because my recollection was that it was a three-way.
Yeah, even on the right-of-way, which is, it was a really good project for
Right.
for all parties,
Okay.
but.
I just, that answers my, thank you.
Okay, what are the board's wishes?
I'll move to approve the conveyance of county right-of-way for both properties in the city of Holly.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, review request by the City of Barnesville for conveyance of tax forfeit property. Jenny?
I'm going to stay here, if you don't mind, and invite Karen Lauer and John Shockley up. So they're going to present a little bit more to you, but I'll set it up. You all remember, just last week, Karen was here, and this is the request to convey the tax forfeit property to the Barnesville EDA. And at the time that Karen was here last week, I was asking about the statutory mechanism under which they were requesting the transfer be made for less than market value. And I know this board has done the blighted property statutory conveyance on a few occasions previously, so we're somewhat familiar with that. And after the board's motion and passing of the request last week, it seemed to me that it was done mainly on a economic revitalization type of theory. And I was gonna go back and check the statutes to see if there was anything within that part of Minnesota law that would allow the transfer. I didn't find anything, and so then Karen connected me with John, and we were trying to see if there was any theory such as that the Barnesville EDA was moving under. And I think it is their position now that they would like to advance the theory on the blighted conditions. It doesn't change the evidence or the information that the board received last week. It's just that if the board's going to pass a resolution, we want to make sure that we do it on the right basis. We want to make sure the resolution matches with what the board discusses and the information that it receives. So with that, I'll just turn it back over to Karen and John. They have a little bit more information about the blighted conditions that they'd like to present.
Members of the County Commission, Karen handed out a series of photographs of the building. This is the old Highway 52 bar in Barnesville. It's on Main Street, as you can see from the pictures. It's in what I would argue to be blighted condition. It's got cracking along the walls, and it's in not very good condition. It's been the source of numerous complaints by city residents. Over the history of the property, there's been several attempts by private owners to purchase it at tax forfeit sales and then remove the blight, but I think it's too much for an individual to make it work. The EDA, the Barnesville EDA, is proposing to take the property at below market value pursuant to Section 28, Subdivision 1A, to remove the blight. The city has been talking with, and the EDA has been talking with a structural engineer, trying to get some prices about how much it would cost to do a full structural analysis, and they'll be at $4,000 or $5,000. So we don't want to perform that structural analysis till we know we have the building. Nevertheless, we feel, based upon our past record of enforcement actions against the building, it probably is blighted anyways. The EDA would like to obtain control of the building, get the structural analysis completed. Once the structural analysis is completed, we can make the decision then if we want to demolish it, if it's needed to be demolished, if it doesn't make economic sense to repair it, or if it is capable of being repaired, then the EDA is proposing to use it for economic development purposes once we would remove the blighted condition. And perhaps Karen can just briefly touch on what uses the EDA is considering with it after the blight is removed, assuming the building is in good enough shape.
Well, before any particular decision was made, what it would be used for, there would be a due diligence process for the city council and the EDA board to weigh all of the different options. I know there's some city council members that think we need like a community center, event center. If we were to do that, it would be continued to be held by the city. There's a nonprofit that has come forward with an idea of, as I mentioned at the last meeting, doing a thrift store in there. We've also explored the idea of doing a business incubator, which economic development groups commonly do to foster smaller businesses and incubate them in that building. But no decision has been made, nor will a decision be made until the structural analysis report is back. And as John has indicated, if a structural engineer indicates there's $300,000 or $400,000 of work to be done, I would guess that the decision will be made to demolish it. We do believe that just in the conditions that we can see on the surface, we're looking at $100,000 to $200,000 of work to make it so that it's suitable for anything to go in there. So we would not take on a project like this, nor would we make this request unless we felt we were the only party really in a position to deal with the blighted conditions.
So with that, board members, in order to pass the request, which had been the board's wishes last week, it just needs to be found that this is in the public interest due to the property's blighted condition, and that such transfer is necessary to provide the best incentive to correct that condition and put the property back into the best use in the shortest period of time. So if the board feels that is in fact the case, I don't know, maybe it would be good to have another motion, but I do have a resolution for the board then based on that particular statutory mechanism.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that Karen just mentioned at the very end of her comments was that it's anticipated to cost $100,000 to $200,000 just to get it so that anybody could move in. To me, that tells me of a blighted condition. Something that's going to be that costly to get it to where any tenant could go there, means it is not up to standards. And that, and then of course, the photos that have been presented here today as well. I know it was, I think it was, Jenny, I think it was you that made the motion last time on it, so I'll defer to you on that.
Do you want to read your, is this?
Sure. It says, be it resolved on this 8th day of September 2015 that the property owned by the state of Minnesota, County of Clay, and legally described as the attached Exhibit A, be sold to the Barnesville Economic Development Authority for $0. This reduced price is in the public interest due to the property's blighted condition and is necessary to provide an incentive to correct such condition as it will allow the property to be put to the best use in the shortest period of time. Be it further resolved that the chair of the board, the county auditor, and/or the county administrator are hereby authorized to execute whatever documents are necessary to effectuate said transfer. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective as of September 8th, 2015, the date that this board action was taken on the matter.
Jenny?
Mr. Chair, my motion last week was based on the blighted condition, which I had been aware of. So today, my motion is to approve the resolution that Jenny Schmarza just read. And I do appreciate the fact that the city understands the financial implications that taking on a property in this state will be, and I do feel that it is for the best use of the community and the county as a whole.
Second the motion.
Motion and a second. Frank?
If they improve this and they sell it somewhere, that goes back on the tax rolls again then?
So if they sell to the public,
Would we have to do another vote then to get it back on, or it just goes back on?
No, it would just go back on.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks. We brought book and verse along just in case.
Yeah. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, next item on the agenda, adopt resolution establishing procedure relating to compliance with reimbursement bond regulations under the Internal Revenue Code for Corrections Facilities Project. Morning, Brian.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. What you have before you is a resolution that Ehlers and Associates is recommending to us that is required by the IRS if, in fact, we want to expend dollars for fixed assets, real estate, and different things, and want to be reimbursed by the bonding mechanism. And this is in relationship to the jail and law enforcement center that we're talking about. So the idea is we are now starting to purchase real property, those houses to the north, and within 60 days, if you want to be reimbursed by the bonding mechanism for that property, you have to enact a resolution that says you are going to expend these dollars for this project and you want to be reimbursed with that bonding mechanism.
Questions for Brian?
I'd move approval of the resolution.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the issue?
Well, it's pretty simple. We've already committed to the investment of these properties. And if we don't do this resolution, then it simply means that those funds have to come from our current funds rather than be part of the overall project cost and the bond issue. So it means that it would come out of our reserves. There's no other, we would have no other option to get reimbursed for these expenses.
This allows us to get our money back once we move forward with the project. So,
But we don't have a bond yet, though, do we?
No, not yet.
No, not yet. No.
Not yet. No. That'll be,
So where does the money come from to pay for these properties? We have to take it out of reserves now.
we take it out of the reserves now, but Commissioner Gross, if we don't pass this resolution, we wouldn't be able to pay back our reserves.
With the bonding money.
With the bonding money.
Very good. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if it may, I think it explained in the memo here too, that there's certain restrictions on that. We have to have a time limit when we have to do these, and that's why it's kind of sensitive. We have to pass this resolution within 60 days of buying the property, and then this gives Lori the authority to do a declaration when these properties are purchased, so she'll add to her file how much cost is going out. And then we have to bond within, I think it's 18 months, no later than 3 years of when this project is put in operation in order to pay ourselves back. So, and if you want, the idea, I guess, is if you're going to take $3 million from your reserves and you want to replenish those reserves with, and keep the jail project as one project and the costs contained together, and then make payments on it as to the different varieties of way we've talked about paying for it. We wanted to borrow the money from our reserves, but then pay it back from this bond, was the idea.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Brian. Don't leave, you're up again. Okay. 2016 budget update. Morning, Lori.
Good morning.
Morning.
Now we get it new and improved?
Well, yeah, that's why it's a little bit confusing here. And we just printed out some of these things this morning. If, I mean, yesterday was a holiday and last week, well, this is the current one that you had last year, or last week. I'm going to lay that here in case you want to refer to it. But this is the new one we just printed out this morning, and pass that around. Now, last week, you had a net levy. That spread levy was $28,027,435. Excuse me. What I was asked to do was to add the two reductions that we made last week in regards to the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development Commission of $7,500. That had been withdrawn or pulled out of the budget, and then the county fair of the $2,000 to put those two back in. Now, the one we just passed around, have those two back in. And our chair asked to put those back in to see how much the needle moves. And if you'll see on your spread levy, it's an increase. The levy is 7.19. Last week, if you have it in front of you, it was 7.16. So that about that $10,000, that $9,500 that was put back in, moved the percentage 0.03%. And that's what we were asked to do. Now, there's one other, and we did not take that out there because we feel any of these items, we're getting so close now, we need discussion and then determination of whether we want to do that. And was on the Humane Society, the $1,500 Humane Society, if you still want to continue to make that contribution to the Humane Society. I did check with the Sheriff's Department, and they said that they pay a fee when they have an animal, when they assist with an animal, the Humane Society. They have a contract with the veterinary service here on the Minnesota side, and it would not affect their operation if you do not do the Humane Society contribution. You've done that for a long time, and something that we'd want to discuss, or you folks would want to discuss.
So that money has nothing to do with our impounding animals that need to be impounded right now. That doesn't.
That is correct, Mr.
They're
Chair.
already paid for that service.
Yeah. So, and also the one I passed around to you today does not have the $200,000 added or withdrawn, because she's waiting for the exact figures.
I'm calculating those numbers, and I'm waiting for a spreadsheet from the city of Moorhead
And I thought if we're gonna put it in, we should put it in with an accurate number.
That's that home incentive
Correct.
deal, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So what you have here is, and that would just balance out. That would not affect the levy at all, and we talked about that last week, because that's already being accounted for, that's already out of there. So if she adds it back in, it balances out. So then you start from there, and last week I gave you some information in regards to what taking $400,000 out, and I believe you have that information in front of you, what your spread levy would be, and that would be 5.63, and of course now it would be 5.66. So like I said, I hate to even mention that 300. And then if you take the $600,000 out of revenues over expenditures from last year, let's use that terminology, I think that's what you wanted to use, then you've got a spread levy of 4.86. So, and then with your new construction added, you're at, or subtracted, I should say, you're at a net levy increase of 3%. And it would be 3.03 if you want to add that in.
Right.
So I guess at this point in time, I mean, what is it today? It's the 8th, isn't it, of September? And I think we have our last meeting of the month, the 23rd, 22nd, and that's when you'll need to pass your preliminary levy. And I think it was Commissioner Campbell said last week, he talked about, the fact that your levy can go down, it can't go up after that date. Well, that signaled to us, we weren't sure exactly where you wanted to go as far as how many reserves you wanted to identify at this time, and, take 400 this time and then go for the 6 later, if you want to start with the 6, or if you want to use them at all. But we're getting kind of close to where we need to start being pretty serious about a preliminary levy.
Anybody?
Well, I'll start off, and again, what we talk about, the 4 and the 6 is really 6 and 8 when we correct that, but, ultimately, a 3% sounds a lot, that net ultimately sounds better to me than the 3.77, but because we don't have to decide that till December, I guess I would encourage this board to look at what you were given was 400, which will be 600, which would be that it ended up being 3.80 now, with those changes, net. Right?
400?
Yeah, because
It was 3.77.
So it'd go to 3.80, adding those 2 items back in.
Right.
Right.
And I would encourage us to maybe look at that as our preliminary number, certainly with a goal of potentially getting it down even further, but we don't need to do it yet, but
No.
I guess I agree with that. We can move, if we start out, you're talking about the 400, which is actually 600.
Right.
So I think that's probably the right direction to go at this point, because, I'd like to see it come down closer to that 3% before we're done.
Yeah. And I think it's, and again, going back, historically, it seems we've always had a significant revenues over expenditures. Some years even higher than others. We've had as much as 3 million, but then down some years to $1 million or $1.5 million. So I don't know that I would call it even risky to do the 600 or 800 moving forward, but that's my comment, I guess.
If you do the 400, and we're talking then exactly what you did last year, because it was more of a fund of reserves that you utilized for the abatements, but the abatements are higher this year, so they offset, let's say.
Right.
So if you're looking at the abatements as being status quo, and that's how we're talking today because it's not on the sheet, and if you use 400, that's what you did last year. So if you want to start out with that, and then that would be a spread levy of a 5.63 on your sheet, 66 spread levy, and then that'd net out to a 3.80, like
Jenny?
Commissioner Campbell said.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How much was the abatements last year? You said they're higher this year?
Yeah, well, I'm estimating at about 200,000. They're in that range this year, but we're adding on a new group of homes that are,
Right.
you know.
And
so
last year, what number was it about?
It's about 200,000. I haven't done the exact calculation for that either.
Last year.
How did it change from last year?
Last year, it was like, in 2014, it was like $28,000.
Okay, okay.
And then it jumped because all of those, we didn't participate for most of that
Right.
first year,
Right.
Clay County portion. And then, so that's why ours was so low that first year.
But wouldn't you say that even moving forward, if this board decides to continue that again beyond this, we basically add another year, but a year comes off?
It should be pretty stable
So
now.
it should be fairly stable from
Now that we've participated
your...
in full for the year, so
Okay.
it should be pretty stable.
You know, it's, if you have 6 more houses, it's gonna cost you a little bit more. If you have 6 less houses, it'll be a little bit less,
We
but
had a
at least
couple
you're...
of big
Initially
apartment
cost you
buildings.
more, but in the end, it
Right.
doesn't.
Yeah, we had a
Right.
couple of big
Right.
apartment buildings in that first group, so
Right.
would have been even lower without those 2 apartment buildings, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Good work.
Mr. Chair, I think we have a direction of where we will try to finalize with the one exception. Did the board want to have any discussion on the Humane Society?
I'll bring that up since I initially was reviewing that, and after hearing that it is a organization that is already getting paid for their services, I had a hard time with us continuing to pay for it, considering we're not doing it on a full county-wide. There's not other organizations throughout the county that we're paying the same money for. Entertain a discussion on it if you need.
So you're recommending, Jenny, that we
So we
remove
take
that
out
from
the
that?
1,500,
I
yeah.
guess I agree with that. I don't have any problem with that. I think your comments are true and make sense, and so I would agree with that.
I guess I don't know enough of the, I certainly agree from the standpoint if it's something that's not offered countywide, that it, you know, it makes you wonder, well, why are the people in Holly and those areas helping to pay for something that, the question becomes to me, and I don't know the answer to it, is what are the ramifications of not doing it? Does something end up having to cost government in a different way? I don't know the answer to that. You know, so maybe, you know, with respect to you know, your thoughts on that, I would like to at least maybe get something back from us. What happens to these dollars, and what happens? I'm assuming that we're funding, you know, mistreated animals or something like that. That must be what that's all part of. But what happens if we don't?
Wayne?
I think Commissioner Mojo, you have a very good point. Commissioner Campbell also has a good point. I think there could be some repercussions if it gets out that Clay County Commission is cutting back its donation to the Humane Society. I don't know if I'd want to go along with that.
And I understand that. My major concern was that we were paying for the services that we're using. I didn't feel it was appropriate to make a donation to an entity that wasn't, we're not going to just continue to give to something just to give to something. If we are truly concerned about animal well-being, we probably would have reached out to a county-wide entity and not just a Fargo-Moorhead-based group. You know, if you talk about ramifications, if it comes up that they need to increase the fees on their services a little bit to cover it, then we'll continue to pay for what we're using, and then other groups will pay for what they use as well.
So, you're clear on what we want then? No. So, you want more information?
Yeah, Mr. You know,
Jenny, you want to remove it? I want to remove it. Frank?
I want to remove it.
I'd like, well, that's three out of 5, so that's in that discussion.
And approval doesn't need to come today, because you'll approve that when you approve the budget.
Sure.
We'll go ahead and
Good.
make that adjustment.
Yeah, maybe in the meantime, you can let them know that we're looking at removing that from our budget, and if they want to respond to that, or,
I think that's fair.
we can see, so.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, where are we at here? Committee reports, yeah. Wayne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Tuesday, September 1st, Insurance Committee meeting, that has been covered. Tuesday, September 1st, Moorhead Planning Commission. General business, then we accepted a preliminary plat of Johnson Farms 4th Edition. This was a replat of the preliminary plat. This will now go on to the City Council for final approval. On Wednesday, September 2nd, Clay County Collaborative Governance Board meeting. General business, then we reviewed the fiscal year 2015 budget. We reviewed the program data for the entire 2015 fiscal year. We went over the fiscal year 2016 budget. Then we had an update on the fiscal year 16 truancy intervention program, which was discussed or brought up just a little bit ago, beginning of the meeting. And when we discussed the collaborative coordinator's salary, nothing is definite on that yet. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Frank.
No report.
Kevin?
Yeah, I also had the insurance committee meeting, and that was well discussed here today. Their jail finance committee, we also acted on the major issue that was discussed there, and that was the resolutions needed to make sure that we could recoup our funds for the bond issue. She did give us some other information on what our debt ceiling, bonding debt ceilings are and things of that nature. And we're, anything that we'd be doing, we'd be well within those limits moving forward. We did talk about moving forward on a future jail/LEC, the discussion that might happen with the county taxpayers and whether or not we're going to put this to property tax or a sales tax issue. And what would some of the strategic things that would need to be done to make sure that if, for example, a sales tax was approved by the residents of Clay County, that everything that we do would qualify under state guidelines to be reimbursed by the sales tax. Similar, it would. So there, we've had. Those are discussions that are starting. We just want to make sure that if we do go that route, that we've covered our bases and make sure that we can be reimbursed under the sales tax option for the project. Then on the, and if anybody has questions on that, I can answer them after. And on the second, of course, the General of the Corps visited here, General Bostic, and I know I had a conflict, so I didn't get there right away, but Grant sat in my place, so he can also give a report on that, but it was mostly regarding the project partnership agreement with the federal government and how that can improve the potential financial backing by the federal government. In other words, make it happen sooner. I did not make the Clay County Joint Powers Board meeting, but Jenny will report on that. But I did attend that day. I attended the Red River Basin Commission's meeting at the Courtyard by Marriott, and there was a number of things discussed at that meeting. There was some interesting things that certainly were talked about. A lot of them had to deal with water quality issues, and the discussion about Jenny's probably familiar with this, the proposed buffer program was put out there by the governor, and what ended up happening is they did agree to the 1 rod buffer on all properties, which ends up being like a 16.5-foot buffer between lands and streams, that helps clear. There's a significant amount of phosphorus that's entering For example, the Red River through all its tributaries going into Lake Winnipeg, and it's causing some, and, you know, those numbers are significantly high compared to just a few short years ago. And so they have goals that they'd like each watershed district to try to work on to improve that. There gets to be some concern there, of course, with the ag communities regarding some phosphorus issues, but it was an interesting conversation that they had. And the same with not only is the phosphorus high, but the nitrogen has also gone way up. And then there was a report on current flood control projects going on, and of course Manitoba gave a report on their issues. And interestingly enough, that you know, their diversion projects and all the other things they're doing, they're even escalating those and making them bigger and more, expanding them even more because of the threats of today. Then there was a report given by Darrell Vanyo and April Walker regarding the FM diversion project, and that was well done and well received, and there was questions by the Basin Commission on that as well. That was primarily it for me.
Thank you, Jenny.
I had one meeting, the Clay County Joint Powers Committee met last week. We've taken a summer break, and so that was our first meeting back, and the goal of the meeting was to kind of give an update on the facilities that are in planning mode between the city, the county, and the schools. So it was well attended, and that was it.
Thank you. I also had the jail finance meeting. Kevin reported on that. And I did attend the diversion meeting last week, and let's see, Senators Hoeven and Heitkamp were there, and Governor Dalrymple from North Dakota, and Congressman Peterson from Minnesota, and Lieutenant General Tom Bostic was there representing the Corps. He's the head person at the Corps of Engineers, and I thought the meeting was very positive overall. The main discussion, or the reason for the meeting, was to get the general here to see actually what's going on with this project, and to discuss this public-private partnership for financing the diversion, and it was very positive. I thought General Bostic was very positive about this. He said this is the direction they've been instructed to move in terms of helping get some of these projects moving, and he was very positive, very supportive of the public-private partnership, and at least my opinion at the meeting is that he's going back to Washington. He's already had this discussion at the White House, and it sounds very positive, and it sounds like he's going to be pushing to move this thing forward. And the board did take a vote on issuing a notice of intent to develop a public-private partnership, which was passed by the board. And it sounds like there's already a lot of interest in the private sector to help move this project forward. So that was it for me. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have contacted, in regards to the private-public partnership, I have contacted the diversion in regards to a presentation to this board about the topic and how it's going to work. I haven't gotten a date out of them yet, but I will follow. I just made a note to myself to follow up on that again. Yes, Mr. Chair, I attended the Insurance Committee meeting that was already addressed today, very in much detail. Darren and I have had some meetings in regards to personnel rating system that the county has and how it's set up, and we'll probably be talking about that next Tuesday morning at the BIT meeting as well. One concern there, I guess. I took Kurt down to a judge for the swearing-in ceremony, and had a hardship meeting. He referenced the diversion on a home buyout on the North Dakota side last week. attended that joint powers meeting with the city, school, and county. It was a very good discussion, and in fact, it extended beyond the time because there were so many topics going on in it. And we talked a lot about the jail and the law enforcement center again, and the school bonding program that they are looking at this fall. That was discussed in much detail. So, and then another meeting I had was the Valley Prosperity Partnership, and I think I mentioned that before. That a committee that I'm on, and they want to talk about long-term structural programs that the valley needs in order to keep the valley thriving and communicating with each other, and whether it be broadband or water issues, or in, I guess, what I keep kind of harping on it is our road structure, because so many of our Clay County residents work over in the North Dakota side, and vice versa, that our maintaining our infrastructure, our highway system is vitally important. We've talked about rails on there, and what Jim Gartner said is that didn't seem to be a real hot topic with businesses in the valley, because if they can't get rail cars to move their product, they use other means, which means trucking, and what do you need for good trucking flow is good road systems. And so we've been talking about, too, how do we keep our road systems in good order? And everybody knows costs are going up on it, but then we shy away from gas tax, whether it be a federal gas tax or a state gas tax or whatever. And it just can't be both ways. This infrastructure's falling apart, and we need to spend more to do it, unless we can figure out a better way to improve our roads. So it's a real interesting committee. Jail Finance Planning Committee, I think that's been talked about plenty today, but just the one thing for everybody's sake, we are tentatively looking at bonding the spring of 2017, because that's when we plan to start construction. That's why you needed the resolution today, because you're experiencing expenses today that you want to pay for with that bond. Now, if we bond 2017, that means we'll start making payments probably in about 2018. There may be some interest payments that way. And if you remember right, what we had talked about was that's when you start paying off, or your other debt starts to be eliminated in 2018, and isn't fully eliminated until 2022. And then we'll set up a structure of gradual payments. But you're also looking at going to the legislature for some bond money this year that should lighten the load of the bond. If you don't get that, you're also looking at possibly a sales tax that then you'd have to push for the end of 2016. And again, all that should be complete so that you know what you're looking for in the spring of 2017. So there's lots of timing and a lot of things that have to fall in place on this issue. Then the last thing I have, Darren and I will be attending a training conference the end of this week. We'll leave Wednesday afternoon. It's an AR and or HR and an administrators conference combined. So that'll be late Wednesday afternoon, Thursday and Friday. So we'll be gone, unless you tell us otherwise. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything else? Right there.
We never want to